Welcome to the MacJury. This is the home of truth, justice, and the Macintosh way. I'm Chuck Joyner, and I'm happy to welcome to this post-holiday edition of the MacJury some friends of mine to talk about what we all received for our holiday gifts and what we should have received if we didn't. So going down the list in no particular order, Mr. Erik Bernskiold. Erik, it's great to have you on the MacJury.
Thanks for having me back again. It's been a while. I've missed being on.
We've missed having you. Yeah, it has been a while. You know how it is. Time gets away. We all get busy. Next up, Mr. Jeff Gamet from a snowy part of the United States. Jeff?
Chuck, I'm always amazed that you have me back. But thank you. It's good to be here.
You're always so entertaining, Jeff. How could we not?
How can I argue with that?
And also joining us is Mr. Steve Stanger. Steve, welcome. It's great to have you.
Hi, Chuck. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah. It's great to see you.
Yes.
For a change. Folks, if you haven't figured it out, if all goes well, this is a little bit of an experiment. We're going to see how it works. We won't bother you with the technical details. We're just saying that we're going to try something a little bit different for this time around. So, gentlemen, the holidays have now passed us by, and I'm anxious to find out what you all got for the holidays that was really cool or sexy or tech-oriented, or I don't care. If you just got a favorite sweater, that's fine too. Steve, how about we start with you?
Well, it's funny. I did pretty well non-tech-wise. It's gotten to the point, and it'd be interesting to hear from the rest of the panelists if it's the same thing with them. You reach a certain point when you have a tech hobby or you're into techs like we are with Apple and Macs and stuff, where people just don't even know what to get you anymore. You know, or you end up buying yourself. It's like, hey, I need a new MacBook. You buy a MacBook. Or in my case, it was a MacBook and a camera and lenses and stuff. You know, I don't expect family members or friends to, buy that kind of stuff. So I'm just I did, like I said, I did very well and really liked the stuff I got non-tech wise. And I'm just wondering if, you or the rest of the panel kind of have got to the point too, where their families and friends don't even know what to get them. They're like, they're kind of concerned that they might get them the wrong thing when it comes to tech.
Jeff, that sounds like a question for you, especially given everything that you get tech-wise.
This wasn't much of a tech Christmas for me, although I did go out and get myself an iPhone 4S. I know, I'm kind of late to the game, but I had to wait for my eligibility. What I have found is that my family now goes for different things for presents. They don't even try and figure out the tech thing for me. So, what my parents gave me this year was, it was really kind of interesting. They took all of the 8mm films that they had taken of me as a baby and a toddler and had all of that converted to digital and put on a DVD for me. Which at first I was thinking, okay, well, that's kind of a different present. But then watched it and it was like, oh, wow, that was actually really cool. So that was fun. Then I spent the Christmas day skiing with my brother, which turned out to be just a wonderful present in and of itself. And it's the first time I've had the opportunity to go skiing in several years. So it turned out to be kind of a tech thing too, because I was able to actually try out a lot of gear that is so different from what I was using before. And so that was a lot of fun.
Erik, you had to get something tech. There's just no way you didn't get something tech.
Sorry, Chuck. I didn't get anything tech this Christmas.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, but I'm at the same point as Steve and Jeff. Nobody gets me any tech because they know either I have it or I'm going to get it, or they just don't want to worry.
Okay, well, gee, this is going to be a short show.
But the shirt department did really well.
Good. Well, okay, that's fair. That's fair. Well, I got one piece of tech that is going to surprise all of you because it's not what I expected to end up with, but so far I'm loving it. I got a Roomba robotic vacuum.
Oh, that's cool.
It is, Jeff. This is so cool. Um, it's been fascinating to use it, to learn to use it a little bit and watch it. I'm kind of amazed at just how well it works. Have you used one?
I have played with a Roomba, but I don't have one. I, I keep telling myself I need to go get a Roomba.
Well, I got to tell you, I now have one. I got the 560 before someone emails and asks, and I turned it loose. And I got to tell you, it took a couple times for it to learn a little bit. And I have to say that for the first cleaning, because I'm not the greatest housekeeper in the world, it took a couple passes for it to get one room cleaned. But once it did, now it's just like I want to push it. But what's fascinating, it's fascinating to watch it bump into things, kind of learn its way around, but then realize it's getting low on juice and hightail it back to its charging station.
That's just so cool.
Yeah, and I don't have anybody here to do the vacuuming for me. I don't know, Steve. You probably do.
No, pretty much handle the chores equally, I guess you can say. So no, so I haven't gone over to the computerized vacuum or the robot vacuum yet. Went with the lightweight vacuum, but still, I mean, I'm almost wondering, since we really didn't get tech stuff, can we talk about tech toys we bought ourselves?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I think maybe, and again, it kind of goes back to not expecting people to even remotely know what to get me tech wise. So it was really kind of in the market for new PowerBook, and I think I put off waiting long enough, so I ended up getting the 13-inch i5. Just finding myself doing a lot more stuff out in the field now that was using the iPad more than my older white MacBook, and it's just a neat thing. And like I said, on the other side of my life, as far as hobbies / part-time gigs, I'm actually looking over at it now. Picked up a new camera, a Nikon D7000, which is one of those kind of prosumer level cameras that doesn't break the bank necessarily. If you went full-on consumer, you're talking $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So this was about in the $1,200 range. And one of the reasons why I got it was for the video too. I mean, the still image side of it is amazing. The low light performance is great, but it's the first camera I've had that can actually do really good video.
That's a couple pretty nice toys, Steve.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks. Well, think about it. The best toys you get sometimes are the ones you buy yourselves, as sad as that sounds. But
no, that's a good point. Eric, how about you? What did you buy yourself?
Well, I did get, since I've been doing so much traveling myself this year, I bought myself a pair of Bose Quiet Comfort headphones, Quiet Comfort 15, and I absolutely love them. Actually, being able to be on a plane sleeping through the night is so wonderful, traveling the Atlantic.
Yeah, I don't have the Bose. I have, I think, oh shoot, I can't remember now what I have. Panasonic. I got the Panasonics, but you're right. I know there are a lot of purists out there that argue against noise canceling headphones, but boy, I think for what they are and the environment you're supposed to use them in, they make a huge, huge difference.
Right, and I'd never used them sitting, well, my desk at home, for obvious reasons. It's not really noisy here, and I can play music through better speakers, but an airplane, that's where they shine to be noise canceling.
Right. Okay, Jeff, did you buy yourself anything tech that was for the holidays just for you?
Other than buying myself the iPhone 4S, I picked up a Blu-ray player for the first time. I've actually stayed away from the Blu-ray players simply because most of the Blu-ray discs that I've seen, the image quality doesn't look pleasing to me. It looks more like where it should be a high-end movie, it looks like videotape, which makes sense because you don't have a lot of that noise and grain that comes in from traditional film. But at some point, you just have to give in and get the Blu-ray player. So went ahead and did it. And I can't believe how cheap those things are now. I spent like $115 and got a Blu-ray player. It's a Sony, and it has Netflix built in and Pandora built in and Wi-Fi and Ethernet ports, and it's like a computer with a really crappy interface. But I can watch all my DVDs and now Blu-rays if I choose to get Blu-ray discs. So I know for as deeply entrenched in the tech world as I am, sometimes I'm really behind the times with the things that I get.
Blu-ray player is an interesting choice, Jeff, just because of the add-ons. I mean, the Blu-ray player is what you buy it for, but as you said, they now put Pandora, Netflix, Hulu Plus, YouTube, Twitter. I mean, it's kind of amazing what they put in those set-top boxes of one kind or another. Vizio does a great job of building it in, I think, is one that I know that does that. But I'm curious, did you get an upscaling player to ostensibly make things better, and how's that working out?
It's actually working really well. What I replaced was an upscaling DVD player, and I was very pleased with that. And now with having the upscaling in the Blu-ray player, I get to continue watching my DVDs with the same quality that I'd come to expect, and now I can watch Blu-ray discs too.
Do you think if for the folks that are out there looking, and I haven't shopped for a while, so I don't know if that's something that is included in most Blu-ray players now, but does the upscaling really make that big a difference on today's HD?
Difference.
Really?
Oh, it makes a huge difference. Yeah. What I did when I got the upscaling player, I compared the same movies in my old DVD player and then in the upscaling player. And it was quite literally like night and day. Watching one of my DVDs on the old player on my Sony flat panel TV, it was just absolute crap. And take that same disc and pop it into the upscaling player, and all of a sudden I had a nice, good, clean image again. It's surprising how much of a difference it makes.
Okay, that's a good buying tip if you're out there looking and trying to find something to differentiate one from another.
Oh yeah.
Erik, what would you buy yourself if you could, or if you haven't, other than the noise canceling headphones?
Well, I'm looking so hard on a MacBook Air just to ease off my back when traveling and but I figured they're sort of due for a refresh zone, so I might just hold out. And it's to say, I'd probably buy an Apple product. I would like the iPhone 4S. I could hold up like Jeff just did, but this is just the 4. No one can tell the difference. But it's just not time to buy any of the Apple products yet. But that's kind of time. If I could buy it now and get it later, that's what I'd do. But I might as well save the money till later.
Interesting strategy, because on the panel we have someone who did buy an Apple product, a MacBook Air. Steve, do you feel like you should have waited, or just couldn't you stand it any longer?
Well, I mean, I ended up getting an actual MacBook Pro. I was going to go for an Air. Same reasons, Erik had mentioned, the lightweight, that kind of thing. But I had a chance to actually use, and I've set up MacBook Airs for people. I like the newer version of the MacBook Air. But when you are side by side a MacBook Air and a MacBook Pro, the 13-inch, and you're using them side by side, the MacBook Air, of course, wins out because of the lightweight and the portability, of course. It doesn't win out with the horsepower. And when you can buy a 13-inch MacBook Pro, yeah, it weighs almost 2 to 3 times more than the Air, but you're getting that much more horsepower, too, even at the i5 level. Plus, storage is a big deal to me, too. I am mainly using, again, the MacBook Pro isn't being used as a main computer, but even storage with a MacBook Air would get very limited very quickly, on the solid state drive. So it's what kind of held me off buying. Not even so much worried about an update to either of the computers. What held me off was the actual decision. Kind of really sitting there and going pros and cons of each. And like I said, what really kind of won out was the MacBook Pro. A little bit heavier. I don't think I do the same kind of traveling that Erik does. But really just kind of picking up the computer and throwing it in a backpack or throwing it in an overnight bag, isn't painful. I mean, I'm carrying enough gear around anyway, it seems, but that might be different after doing a little bit of traveling at the beginning of next year. Maybe I'll wish I had gotten the Air, but we'll see.
I'd say I got my Pro, my 15-inch Pro as my main machine, and it's just a tad too heavy and too big for just lugging around all the time, which is why I'd really like an Air. Part of the reason why I'm not getting an Air right now is that I just got this Pro in May, so it's definitely not due to be replaced, and I just keep thinking, how will my usage be when I get the Air? Will I stop using the Pro apart from heavy graphic design, or will I tend to move everything to the Air? And where's my iPad going to fit in?
See, I think you're all a bunch of wimps because I carry I carry a 17-inch MacBook Pro as my main machine, and that really is my main machine. And then a lot of times I also have a very old black 13-inch MacBook that really is due for upgrades. And Steve, I looked hard at some of the sales over the holidays with the MacBook Pros. The Air, I just look at it because I tend to use these machines similarly, right, and I have a hard time visualizing how I can squeeze that much stuff down onto the Air. I want to desperately, but boy, it's kind of tough. And the couple extra, well, okay, pounds, not ounces, of a MacBook Pro just seem to outweigh it for me.
Well, I could definitely see that. And the one thing is, it's funny that you mentioned the 17-inch MacBook Pro. I have a client of mine that I still do work for here and there, and he actually just went from a MacBook Pro 17-inch. I think it's only about a year old. And he does a lot of traveling, and thought, wow, I'll have, it'll be like a portable desktop. And I'm like, true, but I said it gets heavy after a while. And long story short, he actually just recently switched over to a MacBook Air. And now he's not doing video. He's not doing audio editing. It's strictly an electric typewriter in a lot of ways. He has to VPN into his office. There's documents he has to work on. It's absolutely perfect for him. Now, when we had that discussion, I said, you have to be aware. I said, you really can't compare it to what you've been carrying around with you. I mean, even screen-wise, obviously real estate on the screen is much different. I said, so that might hold you up a little bit. And I had even said, well, maybe you should go to the Mac, there's a local Apple store and play with it. He didn't even listen to that. He just went ahead and ordered it and goes, I'll grow to like it. And he absolutely loves the Air. And here's somebody who travels a lot. He loves the Air on using it on an airplane. It fits perfectly, on the tray, where there were times, depending on what airline he was flying, it was almost next to impossible to open up the 17-inch MacBook Pro. So he was getting into a situation where it was actually even hurting his shoulder carrying it, lugging it around over in either a shoulder bag or a backpack. So there I can understand it. But Chuck, I understand your situation too. If I was using a portable as my main computer, I probably would have definitely gone for the 15-inch, if not the 17-inch. As opposed to the 13-inch MacBook Pro that I ended up getting. But
my biggest problem is that just what you said. I carry the 13-inch for travel a lot, even sometimes both of them, usually both of them, because I can open the 13-inch on an airplane. That's really the only downside I've found to the 17. Jeff, you do a good bit of traveling though. What's your travel machine, or do you have a designated travel machine?
Actually, I do. As of this fall. So my primary machine is a 15-inch MacBook Pro, Core i7. And this fall, I picked up an i7 13-inch MacBook Air. And now that's my travel machine. And what I did was I set it up so that I can use it as a primary machine when I have to, but knowing that I have certain limitations. So I'm actually using Dropbox to make sure that files that I need to have on both machines are always there. And I made certain concessions with the storage space and so much of the resources that the computer has. Instead, I put Pixelmator on the MacBook Air, so I could do my graphic editing there. It's limited compared to Photoshop, but there's a good chance that I don't need to have the full horsepower of Photoshop when I'm doing things on the MacBook Air. And so that's actually working out really well. And what I've been finding is that a lot of the things that I would do even locally, where I would pack up my MacBook Pro and take that, instead I can do all of that from my MacBook Air. So my MacBook Pro, while I'm never going to give that up, because there are times when I'm traveling where I need the full horsepower of what's essentially a desktop computer. But for the rest of the time, the Air is actually working out great for me. And I can understand why you especially would be having trouble justifying an Air, since you already have a 15 or 13-inch MacBook. So you're getting that portability. But man, I tell you, having that SSD drive plus that really thin, lightweight body, it has made so much difference for me when I'm traveling. And now I don't even have to take my computer out of my bag because it's solid state. You know, when you go through TSA and get filled up.
Thank you for that, Jeff.
Sure thing.
No, just to prove it. I mean, this is my and it's even a black one, so it's not one of the newer ones. It's one of the older ones. It does everything that I need it to do. You know, it's good enough, and that's kind of what it's all about.
But if you travel mostly when you're going from home to work or going anywhere in a car, you probably won't get the full benefit of an Air, because you can just pack your bag into the car. You never have it on your shoulder for too long. For me, just going back from home into the city and back, that means I carry a shoulder bag. And after, half an hour of just walking, carrying my bag, I'm finished.
Yeah, and I hear that from a lot of people, Eric. I have to admit, in looking at the MacBook Airs, though, the one that tempted me the most because of the portability and all was much to my surprise, was the 11-inch, because you didn't seem to lose that much actual working real estate. Obviously, it's smaller, but the resolution was good enough that I actually thought about it for a little while and may think about it again at some point.
I think it all comes down to this is only for you, for really any of the listeners or the viewers today, is really what you're going to do with it. I think if you were going to be doing some level of production on the 11-inch, I think it's too small of a screen, especially when you see them side by side. I think if you're just using it for email and online surfing and maybe some pages or Word documentation, you're going to be typing, it works. But other than that, it seemed like an awfully small screen to me, personally. I think the 13-inch is probably the smallest I would go in a laptop kind of format, because to me, once you get smaller than that, you're kind of almost in iPad territory.
I was waiting for somebody to say it, Steve. Absolutely. I agree, because I started thinking, okay, now with the 11, even with the 13, I could do this, this, and this, but I can do that on my iPad. So, that's another thing that's held me back, that the iPad is integrating itself more and more into what I do.
Though you can't use, a lot of what you can use the Air for is still, even if you get the 11-inch Air, you can probably use it for a good deal of, let's say, web production and to a point graphic production. I wouldn't dare do video because you need that real estate for all panels and everything. But being able to you can do that in an iPad very easily, and you can do that so much better in an Air, even the 11-inch compared to 13-inch.
One thing Jeff said, though, that brings a couple things to mind. I'm a little surprised that with the popularity of the Air, that more manufacturers, and this includes Apple, that insist on installing a lot of things on our hard drive as part of their package, that they haven't figured out a way to maybe let us decide what we want. And over on the iPad side, I applaud Navigon, because their recent release of their GPS software just lets you download what you need. and that makes a huge difference in how much space it takes up. So Adobe, Apple, for Final Cut and for some of these, please figure this out. We don't need all those templates all the time sitting there taking up space.
Well, Adobe, I gotta defend them a bit because they don't package anything into Photoshop or Illustrator unless you install a part of the extras package.
Okay. I don't have the current version of the Creative Suite, so I haven't seen that part. Jeff, for you, on a more technical note, why haven't we seen Apple release a utility or something that makes the use of a dual drive? I'm thinking in the iMacs, hopefully in the next version of the MacBook Pros, where we have an SSD and then a rotational drive, two drives, so that you can easily put your system on where you really need it for the speed. Now, I know there have been plenty of people. I know Ted Landau did a great article for the Mac Observer on this. Don McAllister did a terrific screencast about this, but you're still having to jump through a lot of hoops. It would be really nice for Apple to put in the installer, I have two drives, one of which is an SSD. This is where I want to put my system.
Wouldn't that be awesome? That'd be really cool. I'm sure Apple will eventually do that, but their thing is always keep it as simple as possible, and that means that we lose some features because of that. And in this case, the feature would be an easy way to set up an SSD as your boot drive and then have your data drive as a regular spinning drive. So luckily, it's not overly complex to make that happen, and you're right. There's some great tutorials out there on how to do it. But yeah, wouldn't that be awesome if Apple took care of making that easy sooner as opposed to later?
I just find it interesting that they haven't, given the fact that now they have that option in the iMacs. And again, everybody says, and before we lost Steve Jobs, he was making the point that DVDs are dead. And I have to admit, I'm buying into it more and more. Sorry, you just bought a Blu-ray player. But on the computer, I don't, honest to God, I don't remember the last time I used the DVD drive in my 17-inch.
I use my optical drive quite a bit, but that's because I have data archiving automated to use the optical drive twice a month. So if I wasn't doing that, I wouldn't be using my optical drive very much at all.
Erik, with what you do, how much do you use the optical?
Never, but I have one exception, and this is such a silly exception. And this is another thing that I got for Christmas for myself. It's actually a game, trying to have some fun. It's Flight Simulator for the Mac, and it's the only time that I use my optical drive because it requires me to put in disk drive number 1 into the optical drive for the game to run longer than 15 minutes. So, I mean, I guess you can make it into a USB stick and problem solved, but otherwise that's my optical drive.
Steve, I'm so tempted to ask Erik, and we're going to go off on a discussion of DRM, and we don't want to do that. So what do you use your optical for?
Nothing, actually. I mean, it's kind of funny, and I was thinking what Jeff had mentioned, and part of my backup routine used to be dumping stuff onto a DVR and taking it off site and stuff, but really with the rotation of drives that I have that kind of leave the premises to get stored, and with online backup, I can't remember the last time I stuck a CD or DVD in either computer now. And am somewhat tempted, probably within the first couple of months of the years, to actually upgrade the MacBook Pro to a solid state drive. There's a couple of services out there, or vendors, I should say, that do sell the kit that you pull out the CD drive and you put in that, and you put in the solid state drive. Something I'm playing with. I don't know if I necessarily need that speed. I'm actually running the MacBook Pro pretty bare bones. It's the first Mac actually for myself that I've set up from scratch in a very long time. I'm a big fan of the whole setup utility when you get a brand new Mac and you connect it to the other computer and you move what you need over, and of course the garbage over along with it. And I'm kind of glad I did. It really did help keep it bare bones, knowing that I just need the stuff I use for photography and the stuff that I use for audio and video production, and that was it. So yeah, the solid state drive idea sounds good, considering like I said, I'm not using it to burn DVDs. I'm not using it to play anything back. Almost all of the media I own on DVD, I don't even have a Bluetooth player, because I like having all of my media sitting on a hard drive, and I like being able to access it from either in one room the Mac that's connected to a TV, in the other room the Xbox that's connected to the TV. I like having that flexibility, and maybe people are saying, well, that's a little lazy. He doesn't want to get up and just stick a CD or a DVD or a Blu-ray into a player. There's something to be said for having that availability of that media everywhere within your own home. And of course, it's also available to any computer that's on the network too. So I think to kind of answer your question, I think the whole thing is just really moving away from any kind of solid state storage. So of course, those CD drives and DVD drives are collecting dust, if you will, in my Macs.
Yeah, agreed. Jeff, go back for a second. You mentioned that you installed Pixelmator as opposed to having Photoshop on your Air. What other compromise piece of software? Maybe that's not a fair way, because I don't think of Pixelmator as a compromise. It's just a really nice alternative and a much more affordable alternative. Any other tricks or things that you've used to save space, applications that maybe you prefer on the Air?
I think you're totally okay using the term compromise, because really you are making compromises depending on which applications you use. So so having Pixelmator as opposed to Photoshop for me is a compromise. But then again, I'm a pretty hardcore Photoshop user. Other things that I did, so there's the whole Dropbox thing, and so the way I use that, when I'm making files on the Air, they will end up in Dropbox, and then later when I'm sitting in front of my MacBook Pro, I'll actually pull the files out of Dropbox and move them where I need to store them on my main machine. So I have this system where I'm kind of culling and preening files from the Air without actually having to do that on the Air. As far as other applications go, that actually no, it's the Adobe apps that became the big concern for me. So I don't have any Adobe apps on there. I don't have Flash installed, and I don't have Adobe Reader installed. So when I need to look at PDF content, I'm either using PDF Pen or Preview.
Both very, very sleek apps and very good apps. And Preview is one of the great overlooked applications from Apple. It's if not the great overlooked application.
It's surprisingly versatile, and it does far more than most people realize. Agreed.
Well, guys, this has been interesting. Thank you. And thank you for participating in this little video experiment. And thank you to the viewers for putting up with this little video experiment. We'll see how it all turns out and whether you will even ever see it. You may just hear about it. But I want to go around the room and let you guys plug where they can find you, let people know all of that. We usually do that up front. This time we're going to do it on the back end. Erik, how about if I start with you? Where can folks find what you do?
People can find me over on my website, which is xldstudios.com, which is where I blog and I have my portfolio and everything. You can also, of course, follow me. Well, since we are using this in a Google Plus way, you can find me in Google Plus, but also on Twitter, Erik Bernskiold.
And I have to tell you that Erik is the mastermind behind the redesign we did a couple years ago of the MacVoices group site. So thank you, Mr. Bernskiold. Mr. Stanger, where can they find you?
Well, kind of simplified everything. Just go to stevestanger.com for links to the podcasts and where I am on the internet and what I'm up to on the internet. And really on Twitter most of the time at TMA Steve. And thanks again for having me on.
Do we really want to see what you're up to on the internet, Steve?
Well, this is all the family-friendly stuff I'm up to on the internet, I guess you could say.
Got it.
Chuck.
Got it. Jeff, absolutely last but not least.
Well, first, thanks again for having me on. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Jeff Gamet, managing editor for Mac Observer. So you can find me there, macobserver.com. You can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/jgamet. And actually, one thing I've been doing lately, which people seem to be enjoying, I spend a lot of time at coffee shops, and so I've been writing about the stuff that I see. So you can go to freshbrewedtales.com, and seriously, everything that I've written there is true.
I got to take just a second. This was brilliant because a lot of us followed you on Twitter, and you over here and see some of the darndest things at your local Starbucks or the Starbucks wherever you are. What a brilliant idea to take and turn it into a blog.
It was one of those things where people started asking me, why don't you have this on a blog? So I can take a hint, and I started one.
Cool. And it's freshbrewedtales.com.
Right.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a blast. I'm Chuck Joyner. You can find me on Twitter, on Google+, on Facebook if you really want to. But the easiest thing to do is go to MacVoices group. That'll link you to all the shows. And please subscribe. I hope you'll do it. We're planning a lot for Macworld 2011. 2012. Wrong year. I'm just not calculated over yet. Macworld 2012. And so we hope to see you in San Francisco. Until the next time, I'm Chuck Joyner, and the verdict is in. Thanks for listening.
MacVoices TV is part of the MacVoices Group and a member of Mac Level 10.